we were working with the Safe Routes program, and we had a parent step up, grandparent step up. She had her grandkids going to the school, and so she was part of this new Safe Routes program. I'm back in a different position. I'm not a teacher driving things anymore. I'm a helper, and she's driving things. And so, last year, I'm like, you know what? Let's bring some of that magic back to Oceano. She contacted Bike Slow County, and so we got a bike rodeo on a Sunday. 200 people showed up.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Active Towns channel. My name is John Simmerman, and that is Jim DeCecco from the San Luis Obispo County area, Pismo Beach and Oceano. And we're going to be talking about a legacy project that he has been working on for quite some time of getting the youth in the Oceano area out on bikes, teaching bike safety skills, and just really encouraging them to be able to get around their towns safely and more frequently and more often, really encouraging empowerment of mobility for these youngsters and going to get ice cream, which is a lot of fun. So let's get right to it with Jim. Jim DeCecco, so wonderful to have you on the Active Towns podcast. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
Jim, I love having my guests just say a few words about themselves. So who is Jim?
Well, let's start at the beginning. I went to San Jose State University, majored in environmental education, received a teaching credential from there. So I couldn't find any jobs back in the day, so I went up to Chico to work on my master's. A year later, got an interview at Oceano Elementary School. The principal then, Phil Gallegos, great guy, ended up going ahead and hiring me. Moved to Pismo Beach, taught at Oceano Elementary School for 34 years. Then I got older, retired, did everything you're supposed to do in retirement. Ran every day, biked every day, surfed every day, wandered the Ana Lucia for about 2 months, came back, got bored, and then I went back to work. Now I'm a paraprofessional / teacher's aide at Oceano Elementary School in a special day class, working with special needs students. So that's kind of my story.
I love it. I love it. And we've got the map here. And so we've got Oceano Elementary School here. And you mentioned Pismo Beach. Pismo Beach is just, due north of there along the coast. And as you mentioned, you were up in the Chico area. So you were up north, not far from where I grew up, which was in Lincoln, California. And so many of my friends right there. I was in Lincoln and you went on up to Chico, a little bit further north there. Boom. And yeah, that's fantastic. You had to pinch yourself. What year was that when you went to Pismo?
I was in Chico for 82, 83, and then I got hired 83, school year 83, 84 down at Oceano Elementary Schools.
How big is Oceano and that general region there along the coast, not including San Luis Obispo?
So we're kind of known as the 5 cities area. You have Pismo, Grover Beach, Arroyo Grande, Nipomo, Avila, and Oceano is unincorporated area in San Luis Obispo County, and we would call it South County. So,
okay. And about how many residents would you say is in that area, just to give a bearing to folks?
In the 5 cities area, probably close to around 40,000, maybe. And Oceano itself is it's pretty dense area. It's probably about 4,000 or 5,000 people.
Yeah. And just to, again, give folks a bearing on screen here, we have the map. And just, again, due north, a little bit further inland, we have San Luis Obispo. And, of course, we have the Cal Poly State University right there. And what the area that we're talking about in Oceano is, of course, the South County area of San Luis Obispo County.
Sure, man. One of the things is, San Luis Obispo being so close, my wife and I are able to go ahead and ride into town for entertainment and things like that, and actually finish my master's at Cal Poly. So
Oh, you did. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so excellent. And then I've got family and friends down here in the Santa Barbara area, so I tend to spend some time down there where there's lots of little stars and hearts and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm gonna have to come visit you on one of my mini trips to Santa Barbara.
You're always welcome here. Love to have you.
Fantastic. Well, Jim, one of the cool things that you sent over is actually a YouTube video, which tells a little bit of the story. Maybe not the whole story, but in a very, very short period of time. I think it's only like 2 minutes. It gives a little bit of your story and your background. I'd love to play this video. Would that be okay?
Sounds great. Hey, my name is Jim DeCecco, and I'm a longtime teacher at Oceano Elementary School, which is just right up the way. My story kind of starts like this, is that we had a morning exercise program in which 300 students would walk or run around the playground, and so it was my job to go ahead and monitor that exercise program. And one day I was looking down the way as far as across the playground, and I saw an ambulance, and my heart just dropped because I knew what had happened. It's like one of our students had been probably injured on their way to school. I knew the student well. I was their basketball coach. I knew her.
Well, Jim, why don't you, sort of respond a little bit to that video? That was a really good overview, I think, and will get us into a little bit more of the story, behind, what got you engaged with and passionate about integrating the bike as part of your activities there at Oceano.
Like the video said, we at Oceano go ahead and care about healthy, active lifestyles. And so part of it was we have a walking program before school. So as soon as they hit campus, I'm out there with music and cone setup, and they start walking / running around the playground in circles. But part of activity is encouraging students to walk and bike to school, which we'll probably talk about later. It was unfortunate, but as a student that I knew quite well, end up getting hit going to, riding her bike to school. Fortunately, it wasn't like a huge accident. Somebody came out of an alley, nudged her. And then, I ended up going to the actually guardians at the time and saying, hey, listen, I know you guys may have, a little bit of a trouble going ahead and getting her to school, let's say driving her. And so I just went to her house every day, picked her up on my bike, because I rode my bike I still ride my bike to school every day. And it was a great opportunity for me to go ahead and just chat her up, riding to school and then riding her home. It was like my best 10 minutes of my day. So it wasn't great that she was hit, but it was a pretty good opportunity for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I see your bike right here in the background right there. I recognize the distinctive handlebars there.
Oh, sure. I ended up getting that, and I rode my bike from Stuttgart to Amsterdam, and that was the one I bought in Stuttgart, and then I had it shipped home and been riding it ever since. So it saved me a lot of money over the years rather than driving to school.
Yeah, yeah. Now, in the video, you referenced, a term that we use, 8 to 80 or 8 and 80, and everyone in between. Or I also just, shorten it by saying all ages and abilities, because then it's really, truly inclusive. Because then it's really, who's not included in all ages and abilities?
Oh, sure. I totally agree.
Yeah, yeah. And so I suspect that, a little bit of your adventures that you have, you just mentioned riding from Stuttgart to Amsterdam, experiencing, especially in the Netherlands, experiencing what it's like to ride in the Netherlands probably was a bit of a mind shift for you in terms of what it means to have a place that's safe and inviting for all ages and abilities.
Oh, for sure. And that was just one of the beginning adventures of being able to go over there and ride. My wife and I have been over to Europe, been lucky to go over to Europe a few times because of the fact that I get the summers off. And And we end up going ahead and doing a lot of like urban riding in, let's say, Copenhagen. And we just took a trip a couple of years ago doing a Clarence Eckerson tour through various various street film cities and things like that. And so not only is it eye-opening, but it's inspiring to go ahead and bring some of that back, or at least try to bring some of that back to our small area of the world.
Yeah. That's funny. Clarence, of course, is a good friend, and he's always delighted to hear that people are inspired from his videos that he produced to go over and explore. What were some of the cities that you hit when you were over there exploring on the Clarence Eckerson Streets Films tour?
We started off in Copenhagen. You have to do that to remember at the time. Norris Airlines is flying people over there for fairly cheap. So that was always nice. Norwegian, former Norwegian Airlines. So they fly into Copenhagen, a week there, week in Groningen, week in Utrecht, week in Delft, week in Ghent, and then we finish it off in Ljubljana. I don't think a film's been made by Street Films hasn't made one on Ljubljana yet, but they could. We didn't bike there, but it's very bikeable city. So we were lucky and had a ton of fun. It was great.
Yeah, and Ljubljana just recently, a couple of years ago, hosted the Velocity Conference, the big international conference, and this year, of course, is in Ghent, and so we'll be in Belgium for that, and I will actually be making my pilgrimage there, and Clarence will also be there, so we'll both be there at the same time.
Great city. Had a great time in Ghent.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a bit of inspiration here. So you were inspired to do something there in your community, and with the platform of the school and of the kids, and wanting to get to places safer and basically the other thing that you mentioned too was that there is an orientation at the school of being able to encourage physical activity. And I want to pull up this article that you sent my way because I think this is part of it. This has something to do with a little bit of what you're talking about here. One of the articles that you sent over was my writing is my Ritalin, and talked a little bit about how it helps with certain cognitive things and really helps a great deal with children. And of course, the great book Spark by John Rady talks in length about the science behind physical activity and how that really helps encourage and improve school ability and with children. So is that part of the reason why you have these activities, these exercise programs for kids? And I believe you do it even before school, each and every day. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, part of it's like if they're exercising, everybody's a winner, as far as we're concerned. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, the whole thing started back in 2007 when, I had a number of students riding their bikes to school for whatever reason. Every year there's something. It's going to be marbles, trading Pokemon cards, but this year was riding a bike. And so, I ended up having, like 10 bikes in the classroom. I think you have a picture of that before this one. And that's just like 6 bikes in the classroom. So let alone 10 or 15. And they asked me, hey, can we go ahead and park our bikes in the classroom? I'm like, oh, you park your bike in the classroom. So I couldn't be much of it. Couldn't be a hypocrite. So I let them do that. And so it was pretty quick after that I contacted the principal and said, hey, can we get bike racks? Because we had those taken out like a decade before. And that was kind of the start of the whole thing. What happened was too that year is that the county had done a study determining the health of various communities in San Luis Obispo County, and Oceano was flagged for having kind of unhealthy tendencies. And so we were meeting at the school to go think about ways we could as a school go ahead and make the community a little bit healthier. And so we ended up going ahead talking about getting students to move, as part of a healthy environment. And so, the county came in, Safe Routes program / ride share at the time, gave us a little bit of seed money to where we could use it for incentives. And we ended up going ahead and taking students, because they were sixth graders at the time, we said we can show them to their local middle school, because they're going to be leaving me and then they're going to be going on to middle school. And so, we end up riding with those students after school to the middle schools and stop for ice cream on the way. And it was so positive, it's so overwhelming that the students said, hey, can we do this more? And so that was born the bike posse, because everybody wanted to go ahead. And we have 460 students. A large portion of them wanted to go ahead and ride for ice cream after school. And so we did. And as you can see right here on the, there's a little bit of a map that, from Oceano down the lower left-hand corner to ice cream in the upper right-hand corner. But that was 3.5 miles away. That's a pretty good ride for bikes that have rusty chains and they're single speed and they're 20 inchers. And so that was born the bike posse, and we continued on with that. As a matter of fact, the bike posse got so big that the ice cream shop asked us not to bring in so many people. I mean, because we were rolling in there at the beginning of the school year with 70 students. And what are you going to do? You staff up for 70 for 70 people, and then they're sitting around. So we had to break the bike posse up into boys rides and girls rides, and the girls really like that, because the boys I'm a male. We tend not to think very much ahead, and so they would do some things, some crazy things. They'd hit the deck, and the girls just were able to get away. And so we were riding for ice cream twice a month, once with the boys and once with the girls. And I was lucky enough to have a colleague, Ann Dreisler, who's in the picture right there, want to go ahead and do this. She's amazing. And we had Diana, our noon yard supervisor and crosswalk lady. She wanted to do it too. And so we rode for ice cream twice a month. And that's what the bike posse was. And, we took over the downtown. I mean, it's like, that's a lot of bikes for those listening that's parked out from the ice cream shop. And people didn't, some people complained about that. Oh, look at all these bikes, you're taking up parking spots. But if we were to go ahead and come there individual cars, we would take over the whole downtown with cars. So taking up 4 or 5 parking spots, you can see that bikes take up a whole lot less space than a vehicle does. So.
Yeah, it's such a great point, Jim. I'm glad I'll jump in and just chuckle about that comment of you're taking up all the parking spots. It's like, yeah, every one of those bikes is a customer.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They definitely enjoyed it when we came there. Hardworking parents gave a little bit of money to the kids, and so they were more than willing to spend it. So
yeah, I love it. So, here in the United States and in many cities around the globe, we have these International Walk to School Day, International Bike to School Day, these types of events to try to increase awareness about being able to use active mobility once again to be able to get to school. I mean, back in the old days, we're both gray hair here. Back in the old days, getting to school, is very common to actually get to school by walking and biking. But now it's a rarity in many locations. In a smaller environment such as yours, in the Oceano area, what's it like in terms of the number of kids able to walk and bike to school? Is it a pretty decent percentage compared to a lot of places in North America?
Well, we started, like I said, we had seed money from the local county organization. So we had monthly bike to school days and we had monthly walk to school days. So we actually separated. A lot of schools will just do like a walk and roll day, like once or twice a year with the in conjunction with the international days. But we decided that we were going to go ahead and try to build some of this stuff up. And by the time, over a number of years, we were going ahead and having like 55% of our students were either walking or biking. Most of them walking because, as I said, it's kind of a dense area with apartment buildings and houses and things like that. But on a national average, what's it like 25%? We were getting like close to 55% as we made this push in order to incentivize students to go ahead and be more active. And they enjoyed it too, man. That's the whole point. Biking and walking are fun and safe activities. Come join us.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the biggest challenges in North America, of course, is when we sort of lost that muscle, that habit of walking and biking to school. Kind of along with that goes some of the skills associated with it. And I'm looking at an image on screen here of what looks like the typical sort of bike education or bike rodeo type of scenario out on the school blacktop or playground. I used to teach bike ed for fourth graders in Hawaii Island. And so I would actually show up to each elementary school with a van full of bikes and, would, go through and teach the skills, course and all that. Talk a little bit about what we see on image here, for the viewing audience as well as the listening audience.
Well, we found out pretty quick, early on, is that we ended up going ahead and rolling out Oceano 3.5 miles away as far as the bicycle shop, that, hey, maybe we need to go ahead and train them, because you can see this in adults. Everybody learns how to ride a bike, but do they really learn the rules of the road? And we said, no. We found that out pretty quick. And so we kind of contacted Bike Slow County, which is everything bicycle in San Luis Obispo County. And they came out and they did some bike rodeo activities. And on top of that, we had at the time a PE teacher, California State PE Teacher of the Year, Kim Schroed. And I came to her and I said, we have all these bikes on Bike to School Day. Can you go ahead and incorporate bikes into your PE curriculum? And she was State Teacher of the Year for a reason, because she said yes. And so, we have like 40 or 50 bikes out there on the playground. And rather than running the mile that day, the students got an opportunity, like once a month or so, to go ahead and ride around campus in a safe manner, learning bike safety and how to go ahead and conduct yourself on a bike. So, yeah, we invested a little bit of time in order to go ahead and train students up, because you can see it out on the streets, and you have people riding the wrong way, or they're riding on sidewalks, and those are adults. So our students were much better behaved out there on the streets than most typical adult that rides around. So,
yeah. And I went ahead and pulled up the website for Bike Slow County so that folks can see that and head on over to that website and check out their activities. Again, that's similar to the context of what I was doing. Is I was doing the bike ed program under the umbrella of our local nonprofit that we had on Hawaii Island, and so that was a very gratifying thing to do. And so I absolutely loved doing that. I think back to that era and all the kids that went through and graduated through that bike skills class that I did. And not only did we talk a little bit about the rules of the road, but we really made sure that they knew how, especially at that fourth grade level, you can appreciate this, is making sure that they had the skills to be able to start and stop appropriately, to be able to turn and avoid objects and things of that nature. So it wasn't just quote unquote rules of the road. We'll see some more photos in here in terms of like things that schools can do and communities can do to help reinforce and enhance those skills, those bike handling skills. We also ended up finding that a certain percentage of kids in every single class would not even know how to ride a bike. They might not even have a bike in at their home, and so we also would have at least one or two instructors as part of my fleet of instructors that would deploy to each school, available to be able to actually teach a child how to ride a bike, which was wonderful because you've got a small bike. We take the pedals off; it becomes a balance bike. You can get them gliding, and once they have that glide, then it's pretty fast that you can get them to the point of being able to pedal.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So we started out here, we're talking about, sort of this environment, and we continue to roll, we continue to expand. Now this looks like a really big group.
Yeah. I was on vacation somewhere and I saw this advertisement for injured veterans. They were going to be riding from San Francisco to LA. It was called Road to Recovery or yeah, it was Road to Recovery at the time. Director John Word, and so I ended up going ahead and contacting them because they're riding from San Francisco to LA. Oceano's like 2 blocks away from Highway 1 along the coast, and so I ended up asking him when he was going to come by, and they were actually staying in Pismo Beach, so they were going to be riding by during the school day. And I thought, I'll go ahead and take my class down there just to cheer for these injured veterans. I mean, this was when they were coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq, and so you know, I thought they'd go ahead and they'd be appreciated a nice little bump to go ahead and do this. So I brought it to the then principal, Tom Butler, awesome guy, said yes to everything, super enthusiastic. I said, hey, can I bring my class down there to cheer for these guys? And like in Butler fashion, he's all like, why do you just get to do it? Let's bring the whole school down there. and so that's what we did. We contacted the sheriff's department, highway patrol. They walked us down there. We closed up Highway 1. We cheered for them as they passed by our school. And then later on, because we did that for a number of years, is it changed to We Are Project Hero. I'm like kind of wearing this shirt right now. But I asked if our posse could go ahead and ride with them. And they said, that would be great to go ahead and have students ride with us. And so the posse would take off. We'd be a couple miles north of the school as they were riding down from their hotels in Pismo. They met up with us and we'd ride up over the railroad tracks and come down into Oceano. And you can see how powerful those images are. I mean, there'd be like, there's 400 students waiting for everybody at the bottom of the hill in Oceano. And I'll tell you one thing. I was talking to an injured veteran, and he said one time, some of these guys and gals would ride on the other side of the street because they didn't want the students to see them crying because it was so overwhelmingly powerful. That was the welcome home that a lot of those people didn't get. So students and injured veterans, I always said this was like the best thing that we did all year was to go ahead and partner up with these people. So it was awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. What an encouraging, story to share. And yeah, I mean, gotta be just so powerful, for the kids to experience that. I mean, when you look at the faces of just how excited they are to be riding and cycling with them, and in such a big group too, when you see the numbers rolling down the street, it brings a different level of context and power to the kids to be able to realize just how special it is being able to get out on your bike, be able to do something as simple as go get an ice cream, but also so empowering, being able to get from place to place, even for somebody whose mobility, whose physical abilities may be, somewhat altered from what they were before.
And I'll tell you what, it's like rarely does a former student come back and say, hey man, I remember that math lesson that you did. but they'll come back and say, hey, remember when we rode with the veterans, or hey, remember when we end up go ahead and riding for ice cream. So those memories last a lifetime. Unfortunately, my last spelling lesson probably didn't. So
yeah. So on screen now, we have a little bit more of I would say a more well-defined piece of infrastructure out here on the blacktop. What are we looking at?
Well, we're looking at opportunities come our way. So actually, we were able to ride in a local parade, and so what you're looking at now is, students end up going ahead and coming before on a Saturday early in the morning, decorate their bikes, and then because we have this infrastructure, which I'll go ahead and talk about in a second, is that we practice riding in a straight line because, we're in a parade, we're not in a race. And so this was us just preparing for the local Grover Beach Christmas parade. And those are just opportunities we took in order to get students on bikes. So as far as the infrastructure that you were just pointing to, that's another interesting story, and the power of saying yes. So if there's any administrators out there, I've been lucky to have like a lot of really good principals, And the principal I had at the time, Ron Walton, helped. Well, he was the one that actually ended up going ahead and getting this infrastructure in. We were going to fly into Copenhagen, and people down the street, the Glazers, their daughter Meredith, they're all like, "Hey, you got to go ahead and meet this one guy if you're going to go ride bikes over there. It's a Mikel Koval Anderson." And so they set it up to where we met Michael or Mikel. And about like 10 minutes into the conversation in Copenhagen, he's all, "Hey, why are we here?" Then I had to explain to him about the whole Meredith Glazer and things like that, because he actually had worked with her. In that conversation, we were talking about biking. He's all, "Oh, you should go ahead and check out the traffic garden in Copenhagen," which would be the next slide. And they had in Copenhagen, they have this mock-up of a street in Copenhagen, for kindergartners or young people, where parents can come and go ahead and have a picnic or whatever, and then the kids can go ahead and ride a mock-up of the street, including separated bike lanes and everything. Fast forward that to a year later, so we were in the Cinque Terre, and we went to La Spezia. I think that's how you go ahead and do it. And we saw in the park, which would be the next slide, this cycle training course. I got like, yeah, man. In the back of my head from meeting Mr. Anderson, it's like, yeah, we could do something like that on our playground, because every playground needs to be resurfaced, which means you have to repaint it, and you have to put lines on it for basketball courts and hopscotch and such. And so I took a picture of that, sent it to our great principal, Ron Walton, at the time. By the time I got home, he had facilities ready to go. We had it designed by Dan Ravar, Bike Slow County, and Sarah Sanders from Rideshare, who was a traffic engineer, so she knew how to do things. And a month into school, they re-slurried it, painted it up, and then NPR got a hold of the story. And I called it the only bike training course west of the Mississippi. She corrected me, and she said, no, there's 3 of them. They're all in like Northern California, and she gave me some links to it. And I looked at theirs, and I said, oh, okay, I'll change that reference. The best bike cycle training course, west of the Mississippi. And so we were able, because of Mr. Walton, to go ahead and get this done. And so that way, Kim Schroed could go ahead on Bike to School days. We can go ahead and use this cycle training course to go ahead and train students. I usually work like 6 days a week, so I was always at school on weekends, and I'd pop my head out the door, and I'd see like parents, with their kids riding on this course, on weekends. And then the kindergarten teacher would bring her class out and practice how to cross the street looking both ways and things like that. It was definitely well used. So you'll see later on is that the schools changed. They have since kind of put buildings on top of our best cycle training course west of the Mississippi, but they incorporated another one into a kind of a smaller version. So we still have something on at Oceano.
Yeah. What's interesting too, and I have some interesting, probably counterintuitive thoughts about these traffic gardens, these facilities that we put in place out on the school property and et cetera. One of the problems that I have with them is that it kind of treats the environment that the kids are riding on and treats them as if they are cars, as drivers, and which kind of reinforces an outdated sort of perspective of vehicular cycling, which those skills have a place. I was trained as a vehicular cyclist from the League of American Bicyclists from way back in the day. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But really, what I love about this mock-up of the Copenhagen example here is that what you see is that they've actually done a mock-up of what conditions are like out in their environment. In other words, we see that there is the curb separated, cycle path. There's the sidewalk off to the side, and then there's the driving lane. And that's really one of the things that I would love to see us embrace more in North America when we are putting together, these types of environments for the kids, is rather than, creating an environment that just sort of works on bike handling skills. Can you can you ride in a straight line? Can you start? Can you stop? But also start to get us into a position where we're mimicking, especially for cities that are doing a good job of building out their bike lanes, getting protected and separated infrastructure, those all ages and abilities facilities that you and I were talking about earlier, and incorporating that into the environment, for the kids. I realize that that's like a dream type of situation. It's like the space isn't always there, and so we're clamoring to do it. But the perfectionist that I am, and as a behaviorist, I'm also like looking at ways where we can shape human behavior. And part of the one of the things that we can do is try to get closer to that real condition. And if this is where we want to go and what we want to see out on our streets and in our communities, we could be training the next generation of street designers to say, well, heck, we had that in elementary school. Why can't we have that in our streets now and start designing this level of infrastructure?
I would say this is that if we could send every traffic engineer over to even just to look at a traffic garden in Copenhagen, that would probably be well worth the money being spent in order to go ahead and do that. So
yeah. And you mentioned the Netherlands, and I spend a fair amount of time over there. And yes, I'll see Dr. Meredith Glazer. I'll see her in a couple months there in Ghent at the Velocity Conference. She will be attending, and so will I. But in the Netherlands, they actually use their streets, their environment out there is part of the training ground for the kids. And so once they get to 11 and 12 years old, they need to show proficiency out there on the streets, and you'll see the instructors out there, and you'll see all the kids out there going through and getting, basically certifying that they in fact have the skills to be able to get around to their meaningful destinations under their own power, so that the parents are no longer, considered having to escort them. And so it's one of the levels of I think adulthood, or young pre-adulthood, because we're talking 11 and 12 years old, that they can demonstrate those. And they do them out in the streets and out on the cycle paths, which are all ages and abilities.
Sure. So the measure of freedom that you get as a kid over in the Netherlands or Denmark or even in Europe in general is incredible compared to here in the United States, as we have to go ahead and drive them everywhere, or we have to walk them everywhere because we're afraid for their safety. So no, I agree. That's awesome.
So we have on screen now a little bit of a grid. We've got day 1 through 5, arrive and leave, and then cost to drive a gasoline-powered car per week. This looks like a lot of math. What's going on here?
Oh, one of the things, if we're emphasizing bicycling and walking and things like that, you can go ahead and bring that back into the classroom. There's state standards for radius, diameter, circumference. I mean, a bicycle wheel has all of those. So, rather than just some dry lesson about here's a circle, well, you can just throw a bicycle wheel in there. You can go ahead and get measurements. One of the things that we did is that, we Google mapped how far they were from campus. And then we go ahead and keep track of how they got to school every day. And part of the state standards is, going in math is adding decimals. So, the part of this is adding decimals up, for the 10 trips that they took. And then we times it by, in this case, it was 50 cents. And so multiplying decimals is part of the state standards too. So the whole point is to bring active transportation and cycling into the classroom where it's not a one-off. We're not going ahead and substituting math for bicycles. We're actually bringing bicycles along with math into the classroom. And so this was just an activity in order incorporate math with their transportation, just to go ahead and show them. No matter whether they were biking or walking or getting driven to school, there's a cost to that, and we had to use math in order to do that. And of course, below there is carbon release. Those are national science standards too, NGSS, and so we were hitting that up too, because there is part of California science standards. They talk about the carbon cycle and things like that. So we really try to emphasize bring what we're doing into the classroom. It's not a substitute, it's in conjunction.
I love it. This is so cool.
And then and part of that is exposing students to different industries. This is Ian Ferguson. He worked for he's a graduate out of Cal Poly, but I had met him somewhere. Say, hey, he worked with this company called Slide Pad, and they were making brakes. So when you hit your one brake, it would activate both brakes so you wouldn't go over the front. And so he came in and he talked to the class about, hey, what skills did he use? Math, science. He was in marketing, so he used other skills to this job. I mean, most of their parents are hardworking blue collar parents. They work in construction. They work in, at the restaurants, hotels in nearby areas. Some of them worked agriculture, because it's a lot of agriculture in and around the area. But how many of them worked in the bike industry? Close to none. So we're just trying to expose them to to various other industries, so when they grow up, usually you do what you're exposed to, and we were trying to expose them to that. So he came in and talked about it, and he ended up going ahead and starting Guardian Bikes. And so they couldn't get the brake system on bikes, like Trek or something like that. So they made their own bikes, kids' bikes, and they ended up contacting us and saying, hey, we need some student expertise. And so we did surveys on colors, and we were able to go ahead and give them some feedback on their bikes. So it was a good opportunity. And bringing someone else into the classroom, I was reading the paper one time, and back in the day, and there was this guy. He was riding from Seattle to San Diego, which is not unusual. There's a lot of people that ride Highway 1, but he was pulling a life-size replica of a white rhino on a bike. And so, he's coming into the area. I banged away on my phone or keyboard or whatever and say, hey, man, you're coming right by our school. Come in and stop. And so he did. He came in, talked to the class. He was a park ranger from South Africa, and he was seeing how the white rhinos were being poached out of extinction. And so he ended up going ahead and talking about his experience. And so, we end up inquiring, what's that as far as the curriculum goes? Oh, yeah, that's geography. That's biology. And so the students were exposed to these types of activities too. It's all part of the curriculum. And then, we took a picture with them for those that are watching on YouTube, that way in the back, there's this gray area and sticking above the students' heads. And that was a life-size rhino, like about 6 feet high, 8 feet long. And he was pulling that. Granted, it was paper mache, but still, you're still pulling that down the length of California, through Big Sur and other areas. I mean, the guy was a beast. So
that's so cool.
And and along the lines of bringing things into the classroom is that we have to work on language arts. So every student, they don't enjoy this that much, but they all learn how to write. And so on our way to go ahead and get ice cream, there was one section in front of Arroyo Grande High School where it was a strode. Strong towns. I've heard you use that term many times on your podcast, but 2 lanes in each direction, 40 miles an hour. Normally, we don't teach students to ride on the sidewalk, but in this case, it was just the safest thing to do. And so we talked about it in the classroom, and so, hey, let's put our writing skills together rather than writing about something that nobody cared about. Let's go ahead and lobby the local city council of Arroyo Grande to go ahead and install bike lanes in front of a high school, no less. And they wrote letters petitioning the city council to go ahead and put a bike lane in. And lo and behold, were not riding on the sidewalk anymore because through their efforts and their language arts skills and their writings, they were able to persuade the city council to go ahead and carve out a little section of the road in order to go ahead and have a bike lane. So now everybody's just a tad bit safer on that 40-mile-an-hour strode. At least they're not riding on the sidewalks.
Yeah. I was like hoping to like slide to the next photo and see that the 4-lane strode had been reduced to 3 lanes, one lane in each direction in a center turn lane and a protected bike lane, or at the very least a buffered bike lane. But alas,
we lobbied
not quite
for
that
it.
far. Yeah. You get what you can. These are interim steps. And sometimes that first interim step from a strode, a 4-lane strode with no bike facilities at all, sometimes this is the interim step to what we really need to do, which is reducing the number of travel lanes and reducing the speed.
As I tell at various meetings, I want to be, a cheer for public works and city council. So I applaud them for what they did. Now it's just a matter of go ahead and stepping up the game just a little bit, because I know traffic engineers know how to design good projects. It's just a matter whether there's political capital in order to go ahead and do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's very much what my message is that if we want to see that change, we really need to grow the community support for that so that our elected officials and our city leaders know that we, the people, have their back when they do make that really, truly bold step of a road conversion like that, where you take 4 lanes, which, by the way, the 4-lane road, of course, as you've heard me say many times before, a 4-lane strode is one of the most dangerous roadway configurations that we can have because, of the conflicts that exist whenever there is some turning motion, a movement happening.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. What do we have on screen here now?
May is Bike Month, right? But we couldn't devote a whole month to bikes. So we said, hey, we're going to devote a week to bikes. Okay. Well, lots of activities around at school surrounded with a bike. And this happens to be a poster contest where they design posters for Bike Month. And we give them a little incentive for going ahead and doing that.
So for those listening, this is some artwork of what the kids had put together, and there's a really cool one here that it says "Tour to Oceano: The Race to Make Earth a Better Place." Good stuff.
Yeah, well, they're way better artists than me. So one of the activities that we ended up going ahead and doing was we don't have a mayor in Oceano because it's an unincorporated part of the county, but right next door we have a mayor, and so we had hooked up with another school, Grover Beach Elementary School, and Slime, which makes tire repair products, and we said let's have a bike with a mayor ride. And so we got up early, as you can see, as you saw in the last slide, is that there was it was pretty dark, and we ended up going ahead and riding over to City Hall, met up with the mayor of Grover Beach at the time. And part of this was to go ahead and bring awareness to the city council of Grover Beach, and also the mayor of Grover Beach, and any other city official that was in the area about the need for some dedicated infrastructure. But anyways, we rode over there, have a police escort. Mayor rides with us up the street to Grover Beach Elementary School. We take some photos. It was awesome, and then we end up going ahead and riding back to school. And part of this too was like Bike to School Week. We had other activities. Erin English, she's a local musician. She was riding from Northern California to Southern California on her bike with her band and playing along the way. And so she stopped off at Oceano to go ahead and put on a little concert for the students that week. And then, we have other activities where we end up going ahead and having some, trick riders come out. So the students are seeing various forms of biking. Okay. So you have like touring, you have like commuter bikes. And then of course you have these guys that are actually going out there. And you were talking about the Netherlands and having, kind of license testing. Well, we did that too. Is that we had a written tests for the students, and then they had to get on bikes and demonstrate competency. That's our award-winning PE instructor out there doing that, and we end up going ahead and having bike license. And we also partnered up with SRAM. They make bicycle components. They have a research and development plant in San Luis Obispo, and we worked with raising money for World Bike Relief. And as part of that is that they said, hey, why don't you come out to our research and development facility? And we did the same thing we did with Ian, where we're showing them, oh yeah, this is how your academic skills can be used in different industries. In this case, they're looking at chain rings, and this person, a mechanical engineer, showing how they design drivetrains. And then, of course, we end up going ahead and looking at the bikes. On the next slide, the Buffalo bike that we raise money, or Buffalo bikes that we end up raising money in order to go ahead and buy bikes for people in Africa, because a doctor can see way more patients on a bike than he can by walking from village to village. It was kind of ironic that students that I had were raising money for students in Africa when they didn't have a bike themselves. But anyways, SRAM was a great partner. And then, of course, every day was bike to school day that week, and you can see the enthusiasm that we got out of bike to school week. So
this is amazing, and I love the bike to school day, the bike to school week, the enthusiasm that goes around with kind of changing the paradigm, and oftentimes it's changing the paradigm for the parents too. And, and Sam Balto, Coach Balto, from Portland with the bike bus there at Alameda Elementary School, we talk a little bit about how it's one thing to be able to lead the bike bus on Wednesday mornings, for his school, and the kids doing that. And there's so much energy and so much, passion with it. One of the things that I'm hoping to see is that spreads over to more of the kids riding on their own the other 4 days of the week, and getting to that level where what we're seeing on screen here for those listening in is a photograph of literally like 70 to 100 bikes. I mean, it's fantastic, maybe even more.
125 or so.
125 or so. And this is something that I actually see at many of the middle schools in Boulder, Colorado, is it's so ingrained for them now that this is their mobility. This is how they get around. And so it's put pressure onto the school system to make sure that they have enough bike parking so that kids can lock them up for literally hundreds of bikes showing up. And it's at times you're just pinching yourself going, are we in the Netherlands? When you see a school that has that level of excitement. So this really brings a huge smile to my face to see that, there is that pent up demand and need. And if we truly want to encourage, kids to be able to get to school on a daily basis, then we need to start thinking about, okay, do they have a safe route to be able to get to school? And then when they get to school, do we have a safe place for them to lock their bikes up?
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, end up having that many students enthusiastic about riding on those particular days. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the fact that we got students wrenching also. Not only we bring bicycling into the curriculum, we actually got students wrenching. And so we partnered up with a local honor farm / sheriff's department, and they give away bikes at like Christmas. So they take old bikes and then fix them up and then go ahead and give them to students that don't have bikes. But what happens is over time, we end up going ahead and building up a loaner bike program. So what happens is that we needed loaner bikes because, students would come to school and they, oh, my bike has a flat or it's not working or whatever. Of course, I would encourage them to bring them to school so we could fix them. But, so everybody could ride. We had we had a fleet of loaner bikes, and those loaner bikes had to be maintained. So, we taught students how to go ahead and pump up it. You'd be surprised. you wouldn't be surprised, but other people be surprised that, students don't know how to go ahead and pump up their own tires, even with a bike pump. So we taught them how to do that. We taught them how to go ahead and change flats. We end up go ahead adjusting brakes, minor type of stuff. They're not bike mechanics working at a bike shop, but they're students that are going ahead and turning wrenches. And so it got to the point where, people knew our school was about bikes, and they just would bring these beater bikes to school. Hey man, I just want to get this thing out of my garage, or, away from the apartment. You want to take? And I'd say, yeah. So we throw out in the front of the classroom with some simple green, a toothbrush and a rag, and they clean these bikes up, pump up the tires. The ones that we couldn't get working, we just go ahead and part. So that way we had extra tires around, or extra brake pads, or extra pedals, or things like that for other students that needed it. And it came to the point where I actually had somebody from retired person from Cal Poly would come once a week, and I'd send students out there to go ahead and work on bikes, because our motto was, I'd always tell students, they'd tell me, my bike isn't working, bring it to school.
Yeah.
We'll fix it. All you have to do is get it here. We'll do the work. And so students love that. They did it before school. They did it, during their recesses. A lot of times they did it in order. Hey, I finished my math lesson. Can I go out and work on the bike? Sure, man, go ahead, have at it. So they'd be out in front of the classroom, going ahead and working on bikes, while other students were finishing things up. And so, yeah, there was a lot of good wrenching going on, which was great for students. And then, like I told you, Ron Walton, my principal at the time, tremendous guy, ended up going ahead and buying this for the community. So I'd be there on weekends. I could hear people out in back of the classroom going ahead and working on their bikes on weekends, because we had these bike stands and they didn't have tools at their house. So.
Yeah, and this is on screen here for the listening audience. We have a fix-it station, so it's got the ability to put the bike up onto sort of a little rack, a holder system there. You've got a pump, and you've got all your necessary tools, the typical tools that one might need to be able to do some minor repairs to a bike and get that bike rolling once again. It's good stuff. I love it.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, because this is kind of a tale of like two stories. Is before we get to this, is that as you've seen for like the last few minutes, is that we did a lot of things at Oceano. One time I was reading in Bicycling magazine about Fort Collins getting an award from the League of American Bicyclists. They got like a silver award, and I was reading all the things that they did, and I'm going like, wow, man, that was a really cool setup that they had at Fort Collins High School. And I was thinking, that we did that and more, at Oceano. It's like, it's kind of like this friendly competition, it's like, well, yeah, we did that. And so I ended up going ahead and writing to the League of American Bicyclists, and I got an application for a bike-friendly business, which is how they rate schools. And you would think that they would have it at schools, but it was under bike-friendly business. And so we filled out the application, and we listed all the things that we were doing. And as it turned out, we ended up going ahead and getting the only gold level designee school bike-friendly business in the whole country. So as a measurement, we consider ourselves the best biking school in the country at the time. And, there's a source of pride for all the hard work the staff and students had done in order to get to that point. And then, of course, with anything that happens, there's a tale of two stories here, is that I got a little older and decided to retire, which is a lesson in sustainability. A lot of times at schools, you have a parent driving something. In PTA, you have a teacher driving something, or you have a principal driving something. And when they leave, unfortunately, a lot of the good things that they did leave with them. And in my case, I retired, and then COVID hit, and whatever momentum we had going just was crushed. I mean, unfortunately, and by the time things, COVID ended, teachers and staff were just hunkering down. Nobody, people were doing great things in the classroom, but the momentum we had as a school kind of waned. And fortunately for me, myself, as I got hired back at school, and I ended up going ahead and we were working with the Safe Routes program, and we had a parent step up, grandparent step up. She had her grandkids going to the school, and so she was part of this new Safe Routes program. I'm back in a different position. I'm not a teacher driving things anymore. I'm a helper, and she's driving things. And so, last year, we're like, you know what? Let's bring some of that magic that we had going, that you've been listening to talk about for like the last 35 or 40 minutes, back to Oceano. She contacted Bike Slow County, and so we got a bike rodeo on a Sunday. 200 people showed up in order to go ahead and ride bikes on our bike training courses, face painting, music, hot dogs, free hot dogs and stuff to generate some momentum. And then the principal at the time ended up going ahead and contacting Bike Slow County, and they did the same exact thing that you were talking about on bike education. They have a fleet of bikes that they bring out to schools. Back when I started back in 2007, nobody did any of this stuff. It's come a long ways in San Luis Obispo County, and probably just about everywhere as far as education on bikes. And so we had on bike education, and then we did Bike with the Mayor, and we have a new principal this year. The old principal was great; she retired. And the new principal has new energy. He wants to say yes to everything. And so we brought the bike posse back, and we're at a different bike or a different ice cream shop now. It's not 3.5 miles away. It's about 1.7, different direction as we can tell. But the enthusiasm's there. And what you saw before is not only did we go ahead and bring that back to ourselves, but there's other schools that the video that you're seeing here is Grover Beach Elementary School. We have a counselor there, Sienna Robertson, that ended up going ahead and taking what Oceano used to do as far as a bike posse, and she turned it into her own, where they're riding to get ice cream. And as you can see, they have the Grover Beach Police Department going ahead. They made this video because they give escorts. You shouldn't need an escort to go ahead and get ice cream, but they're very generous with their time, and they're totally community oriented, and they like doing these types of things. And so they end up going ahead and having a bike posse. And on top of that, the next slide is that our former principal, I talked about him already, Tom Butler. He was at Oceano. He saw all the great things that he was helping initiate: veterans bike ride, bike posse, walk to school day, bike to school day. He brought this he is now a superintendent of Atascadero Unified. And he brought this on a district level. So where he said, hey, Oceano has this cycle track. We're going to have one. We're going to go one better. We're going to go ahead and make a cycle track for every elementary in the district. So it wasn't just like, hey, we're keeping this a little secret on our corner of the world. We're going to go ahead and branch out. And he bought a fleet of bikes, and they do their own on bike education in Atascadero Unified. And they have like a bike mechanic come in and teach bike mechanics after school. So so the momentum's coming back. The things that we did were great, kind of died a little bit, but now it's been expanded throughout the county because of what Oceano did. And we introduced a lot of concepts to a lot of really good people that are seeing the benefits from it. And so, I looked at your videos on Sam Balto many a time. Back in the day when he was first starting this, like I said, a little friendly competition. I'm like, that dude's doing some really great stuff. But so are we. We're doing a million things at that. And so he kind of like drove me to go ahead and start a bike school bus and do a bunch of other things, which I compliment him for. And now we have our own bike school bus. And not like him. He's got like 200 kids. We're like 20. But one day we might be able to build back up to that. And then kind of like the last slide was a little bit of a joke. We built. I told the principal, Mr. Herrera, like I said, the guy's awesome, says yes to everything. So I need a place to go ahead and store some loaner bikes. And these are bikes that the Honor Farm's now starting to donate, that I have some students working on special needs students and stuff like that, working on them during the course of the day. And so he was generous enough to give me a girl's bathroom to go ahead and use as my bike office. So I was half joking, hey, come into Mr. D's office. And there was like, oh, what? You even got a toilet in there. So anyways, that's where we're at now.
Yeah. Jim, what a fabulous story. So yeah, so you're unretired now. you've
Or
you've come back.
unfortunately, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, just talk a little bit about how special this is for you, to be able to do this work. I mean, you've been doing this obviously for decades of impacting and influencing the lives of these young children. And you probably have many stories of people, coming back and, years later when their parents and maybe even in some cases grandparents at this point.
Yeah, we're getting there, right?
Yeah, you're getting there. Believe me, I know. I'm getting there too. And I mean, but there's something special about teaching this stuff. You mentioned it earlier when we were referencing the fact that Dutch children have a certain level of independence and the ability to be mobile and have that be part of them growing up. I'm hoping that this will be sort of the legacy of your work there in Oceano, and as you're mentioning, it's spreading. I mean, all the way up to Atascadero, which is kind of north of where you're at there, up in the it's north of San Luis Obispo. So even further north of Santa Margarita. But yeah, talk a little bit about that part of it. I mean, because it's got to be pretty special for you to be able to see the impact that is having on the lives of the children. Yes, acknowledgement and recognition from the national league and all that kind of stuff, and saying, hey, what about us here in Oceano? We're doing this kind of stuff too. But beyond that recognition, I mean, personally, it's got to be pretty powerful for you and pretty special for you.
Sure. It's the recognition from, let's say, the League of American Bicyclists isn't for me. It's for, any chance I get to go ahead and say good things about our staff, which is they're the ones that are like driving it. They do a lot of things and they may not get recognized for it. So having me out there occasionally, go ahead and
I would even say, if I can jump in, Jim, and just say that it even more so than just the staff, you mentioned it earlier, there was a sense of pride that even the community has.
Oh, sure. It's we're a little section of our community, and we may not be well known for a lot of things, but when they go ahead and see, at the time, 70 students rolling out of Oceano, clogging up the streets in other communities nearby, they knew who we were, and so that was a good thing, because that sheds our community and our students in a positive light. Hey, all those kids smiling, having fun on bikes, so they see some happy students, and so when you were talking about the satisfaction, always loved. It's kind of like one of the best parts of me going back to school or back to work is the fact that, I do get to see a lot of former students that have stayed in the community, and I love being around them. It's like, it makes my day when I'm able to go ahead and talk to former Oceano students, and they can reflect back on the fact that in some cases that was the most meaningful part of their life up to this point. And so, yeah, there's something special about that, and that drives me to keep on working. I had that principal the other day. He's all like, "Well, God, we're starting all these things. Were you going to quit on me next year?" I'm like, "No, man. It's like I enjoy every day getting up, riding my bike 6.2 miles to work, whether rain or shine or whatever, and being here and working with students." And so, yeah, I'm going to be around for a while. In the process of, dragging some of the younger teachers around to go ahead and participate, even though they're working hard in the classroom. It's always nice to have, we had like 5 or 6 various teachers go ahead and ride on our last bike ride, and they were like, "Oh man, this was so fun. Yeah, I want to do this again." So it's just introducing them to good things. But like you said, being able to see former students and knowing that we as a staff played a small role in their story. And I would say there's two things that come out of this. One is that in schools at Oceano, we have a motto: give them a reason to come to school. All this biking, walking, running, everything that we're doing was a reason for them to wake up every day and come to school. And that's so important. But one of the things of giving them a reason to come to school is doing activities and having tremendous leadership and great principles, saying yes to activities. Because I have so many people go like, "Well, aren't you afraid of liability riding with all those students?" I'm like, "No." It's like, we do our due diligence. We train them up how to ride, and we do bike education and things like that. It's not liability. Kids can break their arms on the playground. So all of my principals, I mentioned Mr. Butler, Ron Walton, the new principal, Mr. Herrera, they all found reasons to say yes. When there could be a lot of things to say no, they found a reason to say yes. And that's what makes coming to school so special, because when you come up with an idea and you sell it, that they're going to go ahead and say yes and give it a shot. Say, how can we make it better? So their enthusiasm drives my enthusiasm and the enthusiasm of teachers that work there. So,
yeah, I love it. Jim, I'm going to press play on this short little video here that you shot. You just mentioned, you riding to school, and this is part of your ride to school, into work. Talk a little bit about just or your final thoughts or final advice to anybody who's tuned into this and is inspired to do something in their community. What one or two things would you recommend that they do, to really make this be a success in their community?
I would say this is, unfortunately, democracy is not a passive activity. It's actually an active activity. And so become involved. If you're a parent and you see a need, go talk to your principal. I mean, it starts at the schools because we have a built-in clientele. And if you see a need, let's say, for instance, you had dangerous roads, feel free to go ahead and contact your city council member and lobby them. Because quite frankly, we talked about this just a little while ago, is that traffic engineers and city council members, a lot of them want to do the right thing, but they need that shield, meaning that, when they go ahead and traffic engineer or planner design something and it's a little bit outside the box, meaning you take away a parking spot, go figure on that one, huh? Is that when you come to a city council meeting, you're going to have people like, no, they just want status quo. But if you come out and speak for the design, you're the shield that takes the arrows for change. And so we need people to become just a little bit more active. And like I said, you can get this stuff done in your schools just by contacting your teacher or principal or superintendent. They're more than willing to listen. And you draw out a plan and say you're willing to help. Good for you, because that can get things done.
Yeah. And I've seen it myself, where when there's energy and enthusiasm from the kids, they actually lead the way and bring the parents along. And then suddenly the parents get engaged and active, and they're like, yeah, we need to do better with this, and we need to make this happen within our communities. And then that gets communicated up to the powers that be, and suddenly they have the political will because they see that their voting constituents are like, yeah, this is important for us. So good stuff. Jim, this has been such a pleasure getting a chance to meet you. Thank you so much for joining me on the Active Towns podcast.
This was an great opportunity. I listen to Active Towns every week. You give me like little nuggets of inspiration that I try to bring back to the classroom and back to the school. So, continue to do the great work that you're doing, knowing that you have a really good audience out here.
Hey, thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, I'd be honored to have you subscribe to the channel. Just click on that subscription button down below and ring the notifications bell. And if you're enjoying this content here on the Active Towns channel, please consider supporting my efforts. Becoming an Active Towns ambassador really makes it possible for me to be able to continue to do this work. It's easy to do. Just click on that link below at activetowns.org and click on the support button. There's many different options, including becoming a Patreon supporter. All of my patrons do get access to all this video content early and ad-free. So there is that. Again, thank you so much for tuning in today. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is John signing off by wishing you much activity, health, and happiness. Cheers. And again, sending a huge thank you out to all my Active Towns ambassadors supporting the channel on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube Super Thanks, as well as making contributions to the nonprofit and purchasing things from the Active Towns store. Every little bit adds up and it's much appreciated. Thank you all so much.